Over here you have a data grid for coconuts eaten by either Tarzan or Jane throughout a whole week. So Jane had 6 coconuts on Wednesday, while Tarzan only had 5. On Friday, Tarzan had 12 and Jane had 15. Using the basic calculation formulas that you've learned in the previous lesson of this course, you could simply add up the coconuts that Tarzan has eaten in a whole week. Like, for example, in the cell I6, where you already have the formula for adding each day of Tarzan's coconut consumption together. You can do this simply by entering the equal sign and then putting in the elements of the formula. Here it would be B2 for Monday, C2 for Tuesday, D2 for Wednesday, E2 for Thursday, and F2 for Friday. You can see that each cell is highlighted by a different color for an easier visual representation. And you can also see that this formula is already pretty long. We're only dealing with 5 days of the week, and imagine if you have a data grid that contains 700 or thousands of elements. Then you would need to type everything by hand and it would take a very long time. So using this formula you could calculate the total coconut consumption of 39 for Tarzan using the basic math formulas that we've learned in the previous lesson. Now there's also an easier way to sum up the whole coconut consumption of Tarzan for the whole week. And this is by using the sum function. The sum function basically allows you to add a certain range in a data grid together without typing out all the elements. So by having a look at the formula above, you can see that B2 up to F2 specifies this range right here. This range. And by simply leaving out the middle part and specifying the starting point and the ending point and telling Excel to add everything in between it, you can get your result much quicker. So let's have a look down here and first see how Excel behaves when you put in a range. So you open up a range always with the bracket, and you type in B2, double point, and you specified the starting point. Now you will need to specify the end point, so that would be F2. And then you close the range by closing the bracket. And as you can see up here, Excel automatically changed the color of this range to show you and give you a visual representation of the data that you've selected. So after specifying the range, you will now need to tell Excel what it has to do with the range. So right here, when I hit enter, I get the error value because Excel doesn't know what to do with this range. So I go into this formula again, and then I'm telling Excel to sum, to add all the numbers in a range of cells. See here, I get a selection of different functions that I can use, and I am selecting the sum function. So right here I have the sum function, and now by hitting enter I'm getting also the result of 39. Again, you can use the sum function by not typing out the range, but by selecting it with your mouse. In order to do this, you will have to type the equal sign again, then specify that you want to sum the range. You will have to open the bracket and then select, for example, all the coconuts that Jane has eaten in the whole week. can do this by clicking on the start point and holding down your mouse button and then moving over to your endpoint, and by letting go you put in the range into this sum function. Now you would normally close the brackets, but Excel will also help you in doing this, and you could, for example, leave the bracket open like this and Excel would adjust the formula because it knows what you want to do and you told him enough, and it will close the brackets for you. So we'll leave it like this and simply hit enter, and we get a total coconut consumption for Jane for 1 week of 32. Now you've gotten to know 2 ways to add up cells together. The first one is the basic one where you write out each element that you want to add together, and this takes much more time than using the sum function, where you just specify the range and Excel adds all the elements of this range together. These 2 methods are only for adding up consecutive cells. But what if you want to add up non-consecutive cells? Let's have a look at this example here. You can combine the 2 methods that you've learned and create a sum of a range and add some custom elements to it. Right here we have the total coconut consumption for Tarzan for 1 week, which is the range B2 up to F2. And then we wish to add the coconut consumption for Jane on Thursday, which is E3, right here. So how do we do this? We simply type out the formula by typing out the sum, then B2, let's do it like this, B2 up to F2, and then you need to close the bracket and simply add the plus sign, and then you can click E3 and it will add this one custom element to the range. And by hitting enter you get 46, which is the 39 that Tarzan ate in the whole week, plus the 7 that Jane ate on Friday, which gives you 46. You can also combine 2 ranges together. So right here we have the range B2 to D2, which is the first 3 days of the week, and then we have B3 up to D3, which is also the first 3 days of the week, but only for Jane. You can combine these 2 ranges again by typing the equal sign, the sum function, the opening brackets, and then selecting the range for Tarzan, the first range, closing the brackets. Then you will need to add a plus sign and write out the sum again, select the range for Jane, and close the brackets. You can see that Excel treats both these functions as single elements. It's just like adding single cells together. But we're not adding single cells, but we're adding elements, different ranges. So let's have a look here, and by making these calculations we get the total coconut consumption for Tarzan and Jane for the whole week, and that would be 71. There's also another way to write these kind of functions. For example, if you have a range and want to add one specific cell to it, you can either write it in the traditional way, like you know it from up here, or you could simply put it in with the inside the brackets of the sum. So you would put the equal sign, the sum, open the brackets, select the range, and then simply add the element that you wish to add to this function inside of the brackets, like this. Hit enter and we get 34. You can also add more than one element, single element. So it would be exactly the same. You type in the equal sign, the sum, open up the bracket, select B2 until D2, then insert B3, D3 and F3. And then by closing the bracket and hitting enter, you again get a range which gets added these three custom elements B3, D3 and F3 to it.